Yeah, I thought it would be really helpful for all of our listeners because last week we talked a little bit about Virgin Galactic and how it soared, skyrocketed last week. And, the big question was, Todd, are you going to sell it? Because everybody knows that I like to sell verticals. And just as a recap, in case you missed last week's show, I do tend to sell verticals, but I like to sell verticals traditionally when they're breaking out to all-time highs. And that wasn't necessarily the case last week with Virgin Galactic. Hindsight being 2020, Joe, if I was, hindsight capital, right? If I was able to go back in time and time all of my entries perfect, which listeners, you can't do it. I mean, you have to make some educated guesses on when you're going to trim and when you're going to add. Yeah, I sell that rally on when we were talking, and I could have bought it back theoretically a few days later as it started to fill the gap. But I want to bring up my my charts here, Joe, and just show people a little bit more. Hey, listen, if you're following us on YouTube, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. There's no charge to follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe just by clicking the button to subscribe. You can hit the bell, smash the like, etc. It really helps us with Google's algorithm and helps us.
We passed 500 subscribers last week, by the way. Thank you all so much.
We did, and hopefully
keep it coming.
Come even faster. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us every week on the show to talk, and thousands of you listening every week to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, etc. Just so appreciative of the support that you're showing the show. Anyways, for those of you on YouTube, I am displaying the chart. For those of you listening at home or as you're driving, I'll try to explain it the best I can. So we were talking last week about how Virgin Galactic soared, jumped much higher on the FAA news that it was going to allow space tourists to be on their planes, the first such approval, if you will. We talked a little bit about how there was a gap to fill. Sure enough, we did come down and yesterday filled that gap. And then today, the stock opened up 20%, Joe, today, because Branson, who everybody knows from Virgin, his various companies with that Virgin nameplate, he's going into space. He's going to be one of the first space tourists, and that's going to happen on July 11th, apparently, 9 days before Bezos was planning to go up into space on his company's Blue Origin. Blue Origin is not publicly traded yet, so space is the only pure play, if you will. SPCE is the symbol there on space tourism. We have come down off of those highs from earlier today, Joe. We're up about 4.6%. Volume is pretty heavier than yesterday, which was the sell day that kind of filled that gap. So what am I doing now, listeners? I'm just sitting still. I mean, if we break out to all-time highs and we get a few different, up days in a row where we are vertical, then yeah, I'll trim again and I'll rein it back in my exposure. Otherwise, I'm just going to let this thing sit and run, Joe, because I think that there's just going to be a lot of news flow. I suppose there is always the risk, though, and that's why position sizing is important, right, Joe? We don't want to take the risk of blowing up our portfolio on one bet. I mean, there is always the risk. God, hopefully this wouldn't happen. There is always the risk that something bad happens. Anybody who was around my age and kind of watching NASA launch the shuttle into space in the 80s tragically knows that. So just something to keep in mind. But no, my plan at this point, Joe, is just to let it run.